This is a unique moment in our high holiday journey. The moment we turn our attention not inward but towards loved ones who have died, some very recently, some a number of years ago, all very much top of mind. The liturgy of these holidays won't let us avoid the sometimes terrifying fact of our own mortality. We simply do not know who will live and who will die. Ernst Becker, in his classic book, The Denial of Death, has written, "Of all things that move men, one of the principal ones is the terror of death. It is the basic fear that influences all others, a fear from which no one is immune." Now, most moderns fully subscribe to those feelings. You might be surprised that that existential stance represents a dramatic departure from the worldview sketched by those who shaped Jewish tradition during the rabbinic period close to 2,000 years ago. For our ancestors, death was a constant presence. As evidence from tombstones in the Roman world, the life expectancy of peoples in that period was just over 28 years. When people died, they did so at home and stayed at home until the funeral and burial. Transport to the grave was a public affair. The whole community was involved. Flutes accompanied the body as women were employed as professional wailers. The ritual was not private because the loss, in fact, was felt by everyone. And there's evidence to suggest that death didn't cause the same level of anguish that it does for many today. Most believe souls lived on after death, that they traveled back and forth between this world and the next. The dead continue to have feelings and needs. The rabbis instruct us, "You shall not eat in the presence of the deceased in our homes. They may be hungry." And we cannot fulfill the need to feed them at that time. To sum up, to the ancient rabbis, life and death were not radical opposites. Death is a conscious, sentient state. Life and death points on a continuum. Death was not oblivion, it was not the end, but the beginning of a different kind of living, freed from the body which sometimes had been source of incredible agony at some phase of existence. It's a powerful perspective. Hasidic tradition, Rav Nachman comes to his friend Rabbi in a dream after Nachman died. Was death painful, Rabbi wanted to know, and Nachman replied, "It is as painless as lifting a hair from a cup of milk." Rabbi Irvin Kula tells the story of his teacher, Rabbi Hyman, who was larger than life to him. Midway into our Talmud class, Rabbi Hyman was diagnosed with brain cancer, and his decline was swift. One day, a group of us went to visit him in his home. His kids were playing outside, yelling and laughing and throwing the ball around, so young they could not have understood how sick their father was. When I first saw him, I couldn't believe the sight. His head was swollen almost beyond recognition. He lay very still in his bed. We began to cry. One of us piped up, "You have to fight this. How is it that you'll never teach us again?" Rabbi Hyman looked up, and with a twinkle in his eye still present, he said, "What do you mean? Now I'll be able to see it all, to study with God, to understand all that I've been trying to teach." "That's not good enough," we cried. "How can we keep going without you?" And with that raised eyebrow, he said, "Leave you? Where would I go?" Death as a continuum of life. I walked into a hospital room to visit a man I had known for many years. His daughter and granddaughter were holding his hand. "I'm not sure Dad can hear us anymore." He was so brave. He focused all his attention on us. It's typical of Dad. In the last day, he kept calling out, "Lynn, Lynn," that's my mother's name. I think she's beckoning him. That has given me a lot of comfort. They continue to communicate with us. Isn't it true? Remember the plaintive pleas of Emily in Thornton Wilder's Our Town. She wants to take one more look at the world as she's leaving. "Take me up on the hill to my grave, but first, wait. Just one more look. Goodbye, world. Goodbye, Mama and Papa. Goodbye to clocks ticking and Mama's sunflowers and sleeping and waking up. Oh, Earth, you're too wonderful for anyone to realize you. Do human beings ever realize life while they live it?" That's what it is to be alive, Emily continues, to move about in a cloud of ignorance, go up and down, trampling on the feelings of others, to spend and waste time as though we've got 1,000,000 years, to always be at the mercy of one self-centered passion or another. That's the ignorance and blindness of living. Emily. Death is that wise teacher, then, of how we must live to ensure smooth gateway to the world beyond. Perhaps the most famous part of the Mishnah, the collection called Pirkei Avot, begins with an unambivalent statement, Kol Yisrael yesh lem chelek ba'olam haba. All Israel has a portion in the world to come. With this headline, you might be surprised to know that there's no single book or tractate that systematically lays out Judaism's approach to the afterlife. You have to go searching for it, piecing it together. Maybe it's because we're heirs to a rationalist Talmudic tradition. Our understanding of a world beyond ours is in fact-based. No one has returned with pictures. And yet many people tell dazzling stories of communication with loved ones from the next world. To quickly summarize the prevailing views in our vast tradition, there is a corporeal and non-corporeal part of a human being called the neshama, which enters the body before birth and departs before death. The neshama is subject to judgment, with the righteous entering the closest thing to heaven, which the rabbis called the Garden of Eden. Souls may become free agents, so it's plausible that they enter into another body and during the Messianic era join our own in the resurrection of the dead. What do I personally believe? For many years, I have believed in worlds and realms beyond our own. To me, it is simply not plausible to believe that all reality lies simply in what we can appertain in time and place. To buttress this, many of you have told me over the years miraculous stories of sightings and signals too impossible to ignore. For Gina and me, our views were sealed the night of her beloved father's funeral. He had died quite suddenly in an airport, making Herculean efforts to take care of Gina's beloved mother in warmer climates, surely suffering from advanced Alzheimer's. The night of his funeral, a very difficult day, we were sitting on his bed, and all of a sudden we noticed a little string flying around the room. It was unmistakable. We watched it for a while. And suddenly it stopped right over his pillow and twirled and continued to twirl. We knew that was an unmistakable signal. I am here, and do not worry. I am at peace. Buster was signaling to us. We believe that he will continue to watch over his loved ones. Those signs can be so powerful and unmistakable. Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who brought great research and wisdom to the dying process, I know Rabbi Spratt comment on another aspect of her work this morning. Dr. Ross became almost obsessed with life after death after a visit from a Mrs. Schwartz. Kluber-Ross was about to retire from her teaching her famed Death and Dying seminar. She was gathering her things in her office when the elevator door opens. A woman suddenly appears. "My jaw dropped open," Dr. Ross exclaimed. The woman smiled at me as if we knew each other. This woman, this apparition, came straight towards me. "Dr. Ross," she said, "I had to come back. Do you mind if we walk into your office?" 10 months earlier, Mrs. Schwartz had died and been buried. Nevertheless, she was standing beside me. I sat down before I fainted. I came back for 2 reasons. First, to thank you for all you've done for me. I touched my pen, papers, and coffee cups to make sure they were real. The second reason I came back is to tell you not to give up on your work on death and dying, not yet. A moment later, Mrs. Schwartz was gone. I searched all over for her, found nothing, but I'm sure to this day that she was there. All of a sudden, the last thing in the world I wanted was to quit work. Some of you may be thinking, this all sounds very new to me. Why did I learn years ago and believe to this day that Judaism is a this-worldly religion, that Christianity dealt with souls leaving the body in afterlife and resurrection, not Judaism? In fact, afterlife speculation permeates our tradition. How Judaism is taught over the years, of course, has gone through many phases. Some of us grew up in the post-Holocaust era where rabbis avoided theology and the spiritual inclinations of Judaism altogether. Yet mysticism, Kabbalah, afterlife speculation were always readily available in our vast textual heritage. And like the many species of fruit available in the marketplace, these texts are available to access or leave behind. The second reason, it seems to me, comes directly from Pirkei Avot, when Rabbi Jacob said, "The world is like an antechamber to the world to come. Prepare thyself in the antechamber, so you might enter into the hall." In other words, we can only prepare for the next world and the judgment that awaits by how we live our lives. The emphasis on this world is terribly important no matter what we believe about worlds beyond. What we do here can determine our tomorrow. The good things in life last for limited days, our tradition says, but a good name endures forever. That name might not secure a place in worlds beyond, but will secure a place in the hearts and minds of those we care about the most. So how do we secure our place in both of these worlds? Let me close with a couple of stories that might show the way. A Bonnie Featherman writes, "One morning I woke up early and felt my father dying. A gust of wind shot through me, and I knew my father's soul was escaping his tortured body. I could feel his big bear-like hug and hear the sound of his voice. He told me not to worry, that everything would be okay. After that, it actually was. 11 months after he died, I had another dream visit from my father. This time I could only hear, not see him. He told me I would no longer see him because his soul was leaving the body, but not to doubt, he was always there. Over the years, I feel more and more that he has not left me. When I do something mature, I feel his approval shining on me. When I miss the mark, I feel his reassurance that I will one day hit it. This strong attachment, I feel, strikes me as strange. We were not particularly close during his life. We were different in temperament. He patient, stoical, some would say. I restless and quick-tempered. My father's life was sad in many ways. So many gifts and talents unused. So many ambitions disappointed. He was a plumber, a job he hated. He dreamed of being a writer, a poet, an actor, all dreams thwarted by family exigencies. My father spent every day doing mitzvot, not necessarily mitzvot in the religious sense, but good deeds and acts of kindness he felt commanded to do. I remember rising early Sunday morning to buy fresh rolls and deliver them to various people he knew, shut-ins who were alone, people he thought could use a visit, and treats from a good kosher bakery. We called these excursions Dad's bread route. He understood loneliness and knew how to overcome it. In the course of my days, I tried not to let an opportunity to do good get by me, and then, like him, take it one step further, keeping alive his memory. I wonder if he'd ever guess it would be me, the youngest and most rebellious of his offspring. Knowing him, I guess he'd been amused and maybe a little happy. I have no doubt I will find out one day. Rabbi Nosson Finkel once hosted a group of American businessmen in Israel. He posed to them this profound question: who can tell me what the lesson of the Holocaust is? They were taken aback. No one knew how to respond. Rabbi Finkel continued, people were transported in the worst possible manner by rail car. They thought they were going to a work camp, but they were actually going to a death camp. After hours in that inhumane corral, no light, no bathroom, freezing cold, they arrived at the camp. Men were separated from women, mothers from daughters, fathers from sons. The lucky ones were given bunks to sleep in. As they went into that area, one person was given a blanket for every 6. The person who received the blanket had a decision to make. Am I going to push the blanket to the other 5 people who didn't get one, or am I going to pull it to myself and actually stay warm? During that defining moment, we learned the essence of humanity because someone pushed the blanket to 5 others. And with that, he stood up. Take your blanket, take it back to America, and push it to 5 other people. That's something we can do. Rabbi Joseph Telushkin talks of his father, Shlomo, who worked full-time as an accountant. Suddenly, Shlomo was afflicted with a serious stroke. While still in the hospital, his son Joseph received a call from one of the religious leaders' top aides who had an accounting question. He wanted Joseph to ask his father. It had been only a few days since his father regained consciousness. He was weak and confused. Joseph hesitated to ask his father the question. The assistant persisted and kept repeating, "Ask Shlomo, ask Shlomo." Joseph went into his father's room and asked the question. And immediately Shlomo offered a response. At that moment, Joseph realized the leader's brilliance and compassion. He knew how sick Shlomo was, but he understood how important it was for him lying in that hospital bed, confused and half paralyzed, to still feel needed. No matter what our physical state, we need to feel needed. Joseph Campbell in The Power of Myth wrote, when looking back at your life, you'll see the moments which seem to be great failures. Even though it felt like a real negative event at the time, it really wasn't. The crisis may require you to exhibit strength you did not know you had. The dark night of the soul comes just before revelation of who you are and what you are capable of becoming. So yes, life well lived teaches perspective. That is what the Torah teaches, I think, when we read that Moses will die be'etzem hayom hazeh, in the middle of the day. Middle of the day, so that all could see and know his mortality? Was it because God wanted the people to protest the taking of their leader? I highly doubt the latter. That decision had long been made. I think God wanted the people to realize that because Moses was going to die, they too will die. That there is an urgency to the time we have on earth. God wanted them to see that the moment when the soul leaves the body is a peaceful moment, a moment when in fact you are now free of the ravages, the toll that affliction can take on our mortal bodies. God is teaching us we live up to our potential of caring and giving. We will leave behind a legacy that all of our loved ones will benefit from. A legacy that will ensure a peaceful transition of our soul to the people and worlds that await us, realms beyond our own. Knowing that death is part of a continuum of life, we can put our mortality in context and lessen our fears. Our biggest worry should not be that we might die. We will. What should concern us is if we have not lived, truly lived in the way God, our loved ones, and we ourselves know we should. With the precious time we have remaining, may we, in the best sense of the word, choose life.